Good morning, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's the start of another week, and that means it's time for the weekend review. I'm your host, George Dagless, and joining me, Ben Wignall and Marcus Ally. Ben, how are you getting on?
I've had better weekends. I'm sure we'll discuss in a few games time. But yeah, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, unfortunately for you, Ben, we will be getting on to that defeat for Preston later on. Marcus, how are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks, George. Another enticing weekend of Football League, FA Cup, of course, and Championship action. So excited to be reflecting on it this morning.
Yeah, plenty to get stuck into, as ever, on the weekend review. People, wherever you're watching, do get in touch across YouTube and Facebook this morning. Let us know if you went to a game and what your thoughts were. Across the weekend action, we're focusing mainly on the Championship this morning. And on that note, let's talk Fulham Bournemouth first of all. Wind back to Friday evening. Fulham against Bournemouth at Craven Cottage always promised to be an exciting affair, and in many ways it proved to be so. 1-1 between the two leading contenders in the Championship table in South West London. I was there in attendance for Football League World. Very exciting game, great to watch. Obviously, Bournemouth went in front via Dom Solanke. A nice set play from kick-off straight at the start of the second half. Let's talk about that first of all, Marcus. It was a bit like an NFL playbook move, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, for like uniqueness of a goal, I think that's got to be right up there this season. It's a bit of a surprise to see how Fulham, obviously it's easy to say after it's gone in, appeared to switch off a little bit, because it is quite a simple, really clip ball over the top from Philip Billing for Solanke to really sprint from the halfway line straight away after kickoff to get on the end of it. So yeah, from that regard, I'm sure Marco Silva wasn't too impressed, but it definitely looks like something that Parker has been working on the training ground with Bournemouth. So for it to come off was very sweet for him, obviously against his old club, and it's a great finish as well from Solanke. He doesn't take the sort of the best first touch, but to fire it right into the roof of the net proves sort of what a hot streak and the confidence that he's showing at the moment at Bournemouth. So it could have been a huge goal. I think maybe it's a goal that gets talked about more if Bournemouth held on to win the game. But no, it was really impressive, and it'd be interesting to see if any teams try and sort of mimic that type of approach from kickoffs in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's almost surprising that we don't see more of it, really, in many ways. You know, how effective it was. It could be something that teams look to replicate in the future. But obviously, having said that, now it's been done. There'll be plenty of teams more switched onto it as well. Ben, let's talk Fulham. Tosin Adarabioyo got the late equaliser in the end. Fulham were knocking on the door for quite a while before then. Do you think it's probably a fair result that Fulham did at least get something from the match?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were definitely the more dominant team. You know, you look at the shots, they had about 21 shots, something like that. It was a kind of a bit like the Derby game where they failed to get on the score sheet the other week. There were a lot more wasteful chances in both games, but finally they got through in the end against Bournemouth. I think it was a bit more like the Fulham you expect to see attacking wise, rather than the one that came up against Preston last week, who were a bit lacklustre, especially in the second half. They didn't create much whatsoever. So I think Marco Silva should be happy in the sense that it looked like they were kind of back to where they were in that winning run without getting those 3 points on Friday. Obviously Bournemouth looked like they were quite happy to hit Fulham on the counter attack, which it showed in the possession. I think Fulham had about 60% possession. Obviously they couldn't get any more goals than one than with all the chances they had, but I think on the reflection of play, Silva will probably be a bit gutted that they didn't get the win, but considering it came late on the equaliser, I think there'll be not too many grumbles from that camp.
Certainly a good clash between two sides that have been a cut above so far in the league, still sitting first and second after that. Both have drawn their last 3 games straight, though, so they'll be looking to get back to winning ways as soon as possible. But that's Fulham, Bournemouth 1-1. That finished at Craven Cottage. Up next, we're going to talk Blackburn's 1-0 win over Preston North End. Unfortunately for you, Ben, we will have to come to you with this initially. I saw one of your tweets actually post-game that you kind of thought that both sides were pretty poor. Now that you've had a little bit of time to perhaps reflect on it and get over the initial disappointment, do you still stand by that? What did you make of both teams in the game in general?
Well, firstly, I thought the weather conditions probably played a part in both teams being poor. I The first half was, I don't know if it came across on the highlights or not, but it was a bit of a deluge in the first half. There was standing water all over the pitch. Blackburn, obviously, I think are a bit more expansive than PNE in the way they play, and I think that affected their game. I think PNE had the better of the first half without creating too many chances, but there's quite a few times where play broke up for both sides just because of the ball getting stuck in the pitch. And when that was sorted in the second half, after the groundsman did the work, I think Blackburn had a bit more of a better chances. I don't think I remember PNE having a shot on target in the second half. There was a lot of long balls and long throws, but nothing really came off it. The only shot on target was in the first half from a corner. I think Piers made a good save from Ched Evans. Apart from that, I can't remember PNE having a meaningful chance, and Blackburn, it only really needed one bit of quality to seal the game. And it was a really good cross from Cadra as well. I think they got it out of a corner very well from what I can remember, and he put in a teasing cross, and Brereton, it didn't take too much to get in front of Liam Lindsay and flick it in, but it was a good header, and it's one you can't really complain about. But as from a Preston fans' point of view, it's just disappointing to see us fold. It didn't seem like we were ever going to score in the second half, and we should have had a penalty, but we got that lucky against Fulham last week when we should have probably had that goal ruled out. So, it's kind of swings and roundabouts, and I wasn't surprised to hear the boos at the end because it's a second derby defeat in a row. We folded against Blackpool a couple of months ago. That hurt a little bit more than this one. But, they all hurt a little bit, and I think there wasn't that much of a gulfing class between the two sides, but obviously the positions now show that Blackburn are 5th in the table, I think, and PNE are 18th, and it feels like one club's on the up and one isn't, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment of the way things are at the moment, Ben. Marcus, let's just look at Blackburn as well. As Ben mentioned, it was horrid weather up there over the weekend, and it obviously had an impact on the quality of the game. But even so, you need to get those results to keep your promotion and playoff bid on track, and that's what Blackburn did.
Absolutely, yeah. Back-to-back 1-0 wins for Blackburn. So just edging their way through to 6 points in the last 2 games. And obviously, really Cadra, as Ben mentioned, whipping in a great assist for BBD to nod home the winner. He scored the goal at Stoke last weekend as well. So 2 direct goal involvements that have produced a decent points tally over the last couple of games. It's credit to Blackburn for, it's something to bring in loan players, and sometimes clubs are criticised for having loan players as some of their more key players within the squad, but to bring in the correct loan players. Cadra had only played, I think, 1 sub appearance for Brighton in the Premier League, and apart from that, he hadn't played any senior football in his career before going on loan to Blackburn. But clearly, they've done their homework, and he's been able to step up really well in the last few weeks with the likes of Ian Poveda and Sam Gallagher struggling for fitness. He's slotted in perfectly, and it'll be hard to dislodge now in the first team. Blackburn in a commanding position now. Obviously, it's still quite tight at the top, but it would be a real incredible achievement, I think it has to be said, particularly after losing Armstrong in the summer, if they are able to get in the playoffs this season. There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near sold on them finishing in the top 6, but if they can keep being as solid as they have been defensively and providing those moments of individual quality in the final third, then I think they stand a good chance looking ahead to the second half of the season.
Yeah, they'll certainly be pleased with the work they're doing so far. 3 wins on the spin now for Rovers, takes them up to 4th in the Sky Bet Championship table. As for Preston, sitting down in 18th place. Up next, and it might cheer you up, Ben, just a little bit. We're going to talk Blackpool's loss at home to Luton Town, 3-0 the Hatters it was at Bloomfield Road. And you look at Blackpool's form in recent weeks, Ben, and it has tailed off a little bit, hasn't it? 3 draws and then 2 losses as well in the last 5 games. Not cause for panic just yet, but a little bit of a rut that they've got themselves into.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they won 3 games in a row I think it was late October, beginning November, and they were probably on a real high back then. Thought they might have been able to bounce back after losing against Birmingham last week, but it wasn't to be the case. I didn't expect him to get beat so comprehensively, but I think with the way Neil Critchley plays, he likes his Blackpool team to play, quite open football. They don't exactly sit back against many teams. Just didn't expect him to get beat so comprehensively. I think Chris Maxwell came back in after being injured for a few months, and I've seen the goals back, and he seemed to be in a bit of no man's land for Sonny Bradley's opening goal. I think you might have to wonder if that was the right decision to bring him back in for Dan Grimshaw, who's probably had his first taste of senior football really at this level, and he seemed to have done pretty well. Definitely feels like a bit of a damaging defeat. You don't expect him to get beat at home when Bloomfield Road seemed to be a little bit of a fortress recently. But it didn't exactly cheer me up considering what I saw on Saturday. I had to endure, but it's they're still above us in the table. They're still doing all right for the squad they have. They're Critchley's still getting something out of them, but they'll need to bounce back next week, because it's probably a bit of one to take. They don't expect to lose 3-0 at home to anyone in the league when you beat Fulham at home and you got good results against the likes of QPR. So it's probably a bit of a disappointing one for him.
As for Luton, Marcus, a much needed win for them, because their form wasn't particularly spectacular going into this one, which I guess again sort of underlines how impressive a 3-0 victory is for them this weekend.
Yeah, I think something like this was coming. Although they were winless in their last 4 games, they have been performing quite well in those matches, particularly losing the 2-0 loss at Queen's Park Rangers a few weeks ago stands out, where for me they were the better team and conceded 2 goals on the break. So it was always going to turn for me with the Hatters. I think they're one of the standout sides in the chasing pack, maybe with Middlesbrough. Definitely a team that's could be competing a lot higher than their current league position suggests. It was just a little blip, and I think this result and the manner of it should give them a bit of momentum as we lead towards the Christmas period there. A cracking side, Luton, sort of following on in the footsteps of the likes of Brentford and Barnsley, smaller clubs with smart data-driven recruitment, sort of climbing up the championship table. And I think, it's going to continue for a long time. I definitely see Luton as one of the sides, maybe a little bit of a concern over their squad depth, but if they can stay relatively injury-free, I think they'll definitely be keeping their playoff hopes alive deep into the campaign.
Yeah, if Luton can get a run, they've certainly got the firepower as well to still make inroads towards those playoff places. As it stands, though, they're sitting 12th now in the Sky Bet Championship table at Blackpool, just a point behind them, but down in 15th. Up next, we've got to focus on Sunday's game in the Championship. Queen's Park Rangers 0, Stoke City 2. Marcus, let's come to you first of all from a QPR perspective. A little bit of a surprising result, really, wasn't it? In some respect, obviously Stoke are a very good team, so you're not surprised that they gone there and got a result. But QPR have been so strong at home and have been in really good form as well recently.
Yeah, I think in terms of looking at the performance, I don't think they'll be too concerned. Obviously, Charlie Austin misses a penalty. He had a couple of other chances, and sometimes you just got to hold your hands up. Stoke are a very good team in this league as well. It's a very evenly matched affair, and Stoke probably came away. The scoreline flattered them a little bit, I'd say. I think it was still a positive performance from QPR. Obviously, the key turning point feels like the Austin penalty, but QPR were in the ascendancy. I think it has to be said, before Tyrese Campbell gave Stoke the lead as well. So a bit of a surprising result considering Stoke's form as well, having just dropped outside of the playoff places going into the match on Sunday. But when you look at the quality that's on the pitch for Stoke, if Mario Vrancic turns it on, it's very, very difficult to deal with. They'll be frustrated with the missed penalty and will definitely be feeling like they should have taken something out of the game. But I think it's not too big of a concern for Mark Warburton. I think they just dust themselves down and change their focus onto the next one.
As for Stoke, Ben, as Marcus mentioned, they weren't in the best of form going into this match, but it's a real reminder that they're still very much in that playoff picture at the moment, and they're going to take a lot from this game, you would imagine.
Yeah, it was pretty, accomplished performance. I think there's a lot made of them hardly ever winning on the road in London. I think their Twitter account made a tweet about it saying it's been a while as well. So I think the fact they've snapped that hoodoo is a good thing as well. I think Vrancic was, key to a lot of things. The pass for Campbell's goal was a really good one. Scored as well. I know he conceded a penalty, but thankfully it didn't come to anything for Stoke's point of view. Adam Davis had, a lot to do. I think QPR had about 9 shots on target, so he was kept busy and he was well worth his kind of man of the match winning performance. And the defence has been weakened a little bit with Harry Souttar being ruled out for the rest of the season with his knee injury. But they've got players that can come in: Danny Bath, Morgan Fox, and James Chester, all capable of performing at kind of a top half Championship level, and I think this result showed that Stoke have got more than enough about them to, be a playoff contender. Of course, they've still got Nick Powell to come back in whenever he returns from fitness. So to add that cutting edge, he started the season very well before he got injured. I think things can only get better for him, and if they can strengthen that defence a little bit more in January, if they can get someone like John Sousa in, then I would back them to maybe push even the top two, perhaps, if they can get on a really good run of form going. But they have been inconsistent like most teams this season. Hopefully for them, this is the start of a good winning run.
Yeah, they'll certainly be looking to build on that result on Sunday at the Kyle Prince Foundation Stadium. The result itself leaves QPR in 5th on 35 points, and Stoke just a point behind them now, sitting 6th in the table. Up next, talking Coventry 1, West Brom 2. Ben, a very important result, similar to what we were saying about Stoke, I guess, just now. West Brom were out of sorts and, threatening to lose pace with Fulham and Bournemouth. Admittedly, they've been drawing for fun as well in recent weeks, but West Brom needed to get back to winning ways. And in what looked like a tricky potential trip to Coventry on paper, they sort of rose to the occasion and got the result.
Yeah, Coventry have been in pretty good form at home since they returned to what was known as a Ricoh Arena, the CBS Arena, and I think it was a case of winning at all costs for West Brom. They kind of won ugly again, less than 40% possession, only 66% passes completed, and they just need to snap that winless run of 4 games, and they did that. The first goal was a good one. It was a good pass by Robinson, a simple one through the middle, and it looked a little bit too easy. You could say, with Grant just sprinting through the middle of the defence, and you expect with the quality that those two have, they can kind of put that direct football to one side and play neat little players like that to get goals. And the second one was just a scrappy one. And if you're Valerie in this mill right now, you can take any goal you get. If it gets you the win and gets you close to Fulham and Bournemouth, obviously one of those two are going to drop points in the end on Friday. And with those sharing the spoils and West Brom gaining 2 on them, it just starts to put them back in that race, although they'll need to get a few more wins before Christmas to be officially back in that. I think there's still frailties there. It wasn't entirely convincing at the back. I think McFadden had too easy of a header for his goal, but they grinded out the win, and I think it could be a result against a local rival to really push them on for the rest of the season.
Marcus, where do you sort of place Coventry now? They've been a real sort of, I guess, surprise package, I think it's fair to say, this year. A breath of fresh air, if you like. And, they've been really good this season. But in recent weeks, form has sort of deserted them. There's 3 draws and now a loss in their last 4 games. And they've dropped out of the top 6. What do you make of, how the second half of their season, because we're nearly at the halfway point now in the Championship. What can they sort of hope for, do you think, going into the rest of the year?
It's going to be interesting to see how they act in January. I think a lot of the early season form came around Victor Gyökeres's incredible goal-scoring form, which has severely dropped off. I mean, I didn't expect him to sustain it over the course of the season, but to have not scored since the 2nd of October is a little bit concerning. And we have seen the Sky Blues a lot more reliant on their defensive solidity since maybe the last couple of international breaks. So that has deserted them a little bit, and that will be an area that I think Mark Robins will be looking to address in January. There were a lot of positives from this match. I think West Brom's 2 goals are quite disappointing from Coventry's point of view. Some lapses in concentration, but they did create plenty of openings. A Todd Kane cross got slashed against the post and out, which would have equalised in the first half. And Callum O'Hare was able to create some opening opportunities in the second half, but it just didn't really fall for them. And it was a match that kind of demonstrated the golfing class between the 3 at the top of the league and the chasing pack behind them. They're fortunate that there is a little bit of a cushion between them falling into that cluster behind sort of outside of the top 7. So they are still well in touching distance of the playoff places. And I think some of the spirit that they've showed in the comebacks like against Bristol City and Bournemouth should definitely stand them in good stead in terms of just keeping them believing and dreaming that they can get back into that top 6. It's been disappointing because there was such a good feeling around the club in that first stretch. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they get on in January. Their league position should enable them to attract some better players than maybe they even have been able to in previous transfer windows. So it's going to be interesting to see how much the board back Mark Robins in January and what sort of personnel he tries to bring in. But they are at a bit of a crossroads, it feels like the CBS hoodoo is over. They have lost some games there now. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because they definitely need to replace the goals that they were scoring so freely at the start of the season, because it is starting to hurt them now.
Yeah, it certainly is. Coventry now sitting 7th in the Championship table, at West Brom in third, just 6 points behind Bournemouth in second. We're going to turn our attentions now towards the bottom end of the Championship table, and Reading's 1-1 draw with Hull City. Marcus, let's talk Reading first of all. Do you think they'll be a little bit worried that they didn't get a victory here? You look at where they are on the table, given that points deduction they've had now. They need to be winning these games, don't they?
I'm not too worried, to be honest. I think when you look at the strength of the sides beneath them, unless there's a remarkable upturn in form from either Peterborough or Barnsley, then I don't think Reading have too much to worry about. You look at the form that Hull City were in going into this match, of course, 4 wins on the bounce. I think maybe a clean sheet in all of them as well. They're able to break that, and Reading, I think, were much the better side in this match. A bit of fortune, Luke Southwood is at fault for Malik Wilks' long-range equaliser. I think he's got enough credit in the bank to allow him that error, having kept Reading in games consistently this season. There was also a couple of late penalty appeals, which looked like one of those. There's a handball on Deschamps Bernard. If there's VAR, I think that penalty definitely gets given. So Hull, their recent form suggests that they were coming into the match as a better side than their league position showed. So I don't think on the face of it is as bad of a result, but the performance, that they probably should have got 3 points on Saturday. So I don't think they'll be too worried about falling back in towards the relegation zone. I don't think Reading have much to worry about this season, to be honest, just because of the shortcomings of the teams below them. And I think when they get some players back, they've had a bit of an injury crisis this season. I think they'll be able to climb the table, but a lot will weigh on whether John Swift remains at the club as well.
Ben, how do you think Hull are going to view this result? Obviously, 4 wins on the spin before this game, and obviously now a draw. Do you think they'll be a little bit disappointed not to have kept that winning run going, or do you think after that run it's just good that they've got another point on the board to consolidate?
I'm sure they were disappointed in some sense, but I think Reading was always going to be a tough game. The threat that Andy Carroll brings, if Reading wanted to go direct, I don't think they went fully direct, which is probably a good thing for Veljko Paunovic looking at him, because he had a decent pass completion rate. So it does seem like they tried to mix it up like usual. I think for Hull, Grant McCann's definitely, doing the right things, fighting for his job. I think they may have got lucky with 1 or 2 penalty shouts in this game, which means that he's probably happier with the draw than he probably would have been before the game. I think this takeover from Akon Ilakali should be done soon enough, and ever since that's been close in the last month, the results have picked up, and now they're unbeaten in 5 with this draw. I think they've got enough quality in the squad to try and get out of this relegation battle. And if Ilakali can provide some transfer funds in January, I think there's something to work with, because you've got a few good young players. If they keep Lewis Potter, Wilkes, Greaves, I think that's a good basis. To start with Honeyman as well in the midfield. And I think as well, with all the talk about McCann potentially getting replaced in the last few weeks, I think he's just proven that the players are definitely playing for him, and there's definitely quality there. Why they weren't picking up the results in the first few months, we don't know. But I think at this point you do have to stick with McCann. The players are clearly playing for him, and it's got to be viewed as a positive result, even after 4 wins on the bounce. It means they've picked up 13 out of the last 15, and that's fantastic form considering what they've been showing in the last few months.
Yeah, certainly have turned it around in recent weeks. Hull, they're now sitting 19th in the Championship, just a point and a place above Reading, who are currently in 20th. One final game to talk about on the weekend review, and that's Cardiff 2, Sheffield United 3. Ben, let's talk the Blades first of all. seem to be going well under Paul Heckingbottom. It's early days, of course, particularly given he's got a contract until the middle of this decade. But so far, so good for Hecky.
Saying that's made me feel very old. It's going to be a long time before we get there. Yeah, 2-2. He's clearly doing something right to get the. I know Slavisa Jokanovic ended his reign on a win against Reading, but these results have seemed a little bit more convincing. He's clearly doing something right in these early stages. I think Morgan Gibbs-White had a lot to do with it, with his goal and 2 assists. He seems like if he does stay with Sheffield United for the season, doesn't get recalled, he could be a really key player. It's not just younger players that are going to be used. With Heckingbottom coming from the under 23s and giving Daniel Jefferson his debut at the back end of last season in the Premier League, you could feel like he might dip into that under 23 squad and use them a bit more over the senior players, a little bit like what Steve Morrison's doing at Cardiff right now. But with Billy Sharp and David McGoldrick getting 2 of the goals in the second half, they're clearly going to play a big part of that experience. You'll think is needed for that kind of playoff push that they'll want to be getting on. It already feels like a little bit more upbeat. 6 points in a week. I think with the negative reaction that came with Heckingbottom's appointment, especially on this long-term contract, I think wins very early in his reign are vital to getting the fans on side. And a win coming from behind, it's always going to have a bit of a feel-good factor. So the more wins, the better. And he's definitely starting to not prove people wrong so far. It's very early days, but if there's more wins like this coming, then I think Sheffield United fans will be more than happy.
Certainly will be. As for Cardiff, Marcus, they were in front, weren't they, up to the hour mark? By that point, Sean Morrison had been sent off, though. That obviously had an impact, and Sheffield United did come back. But I guess they won't, worry about this result in isolation too much, because things have picked up overall since Steve Morrison's taken over at the helm. And Sheffield United, as we keep saying, on paper have got a very good squad. So Cardiff aren't going to worry about results against teams like the Blades too much, are they?
Probably not. I think Morgan Gibbs-White's an absolute nightmare of a player to come up against when you've got 10 men. And of course, losing it, having a centre-back sent off is probably a bit more detrimental than maybe a winger or striker or something like that. So it was always going to be difficult to deal with. Obviously, it's 3 goals in 14 minutes, I think, that saw them sort of fall apart. And they were quite simple goals, I think, from Sheffield United's point of view as well. Both the goals for the Bluebirds coming from set pieces as well, which was sort of an issue in terms of creating chances from open play under Mick McCarthy. Be something that Steve Morrison's looking to address in the next few months as he looks to sort of persuade the board to possibly give him the job on a long-term basis. It's another club that I think is kind of in limbo, that they don't need to be too concerned just because of how poor the sides are behind them. But so until a Barnsley or Peterborough put a commanding run together, I don't think there'll be too many sort of worried heads in the boardroom at Cardiff City. But I do think it's going to be a bit of a slog the rest of the season for them. I think they'll probably get out of it, but maybe not too comfortably. So yeah, it's a difficult one to take because they're in a decent position until the red card, and in that they can take some positives from the first hour or so of the game. But still, I'm not convinced that Cardiff are going to be able to push up into mid-table anytime soon. I think they are going to have to really grind their way out of this one, and I think there is a lot to work on after how easily Gibbs-White was just allowed to drive through the middle of their midfield and defence on Saturday.
Yeah, we will see how Cardiff bounce back from that particular defeat. They sit 21st in the Sky Bet Championship table. Sheffield United rolling on now under Heckingbottom. For the time being, at least, they're sitting 10th in the league. That rounds up the weekend review for this Monday morning. Coming up on Football League World TV, we've got the debate: was sacking Paul Cook the right call at Ipswich Town? Obviously, Paul Cook has lost his job at Portman Road. More upheaval at the Suffolk club. We'll be seeing who comes in there in the near future. I'm sure Ned Holmes hosting that one, Billy Money joining him, and Phoenix Talks as well, an Ipswich blog, giving their views. And at 4 p.m, the EFL Transfer Zone, Sam Rourke will be hosting that one. He's joined by Chris Gallagher and Adam Jones. But from myself, Ben, Marcus, thanks both for joining me. Thanks everyone watching as well. Do subscribe to YouTube. Our Football League World TV is the name of the channel. and do like the video as well. That'd be greatly appreciated. But from us here, bye for now.